Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork. Let's talk a little bit today about homeschool. Right now we have the whole coronavirus thing that really messed up last year's, the end of the school year. I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and that affected them very much, and it affected every parent. And some parents have decided to kind of move to a homeschooling type of a situation. And I have a background that I homeschooled my kids, and I have a special guest with me today. This is my son, Joseph Bjork, and he has a YouTube channel, Good and Basic, also a podcast, Good and Basic, and he recently graduated from law school.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about our experience, and from the experience of a mother, and also from the experience of a student who grew up and then has to assimilate into the real world. I know back when we started, which was a long time ago, the biggest concern that everybody had was never education. It was socialization. Were you going to turn out to be a functioning human being that could interact with other people? And that was a big concern to me. I did not grow up thinking, man, when I'm a mom, I'm going to homeschool my kids. On the contrary, I loved school. I thrived at school. That was my jam. That was really where I felt successful. And when I was a college student and I was studying math education, and in one of my education classes, they were talking about problems that could come up in schools and behavioral things and situations from home and whatever. And one of the problems that they discussed was homeschooling and what a horrible disservice this was. And at the time, I thought, oh, I agree, 100%. I mean, what kind of overprotective social introvert would even consider such a thing? And obviously, I changed my mind.
Clearly.
So let's kind of start. Since you're the oldest, it started with you.
Yeah. And I started out at the public school. I went to kindergarten, and that's as far as I got in the elementary school. For reasons. I remember kindergarten, and it was fine. There were some details that I remember. One of them was you had started reading to me the Great Illustrated Classics, which are abridged for kids versions of classic books. We started out with Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. I remember vividly we went to a bookstore. I was 4.
It's very embarrassing. You chose it. I'm going to blame you. I just went with it.
I will take all that blame. It was funny, actually. We were at a bookstore, and Mom said we could get any book I wanted, and I said, oh my gosh, what do I do with all this power? And I went wandering through the kids section, and nothing really grabbed me. And then I went wandering through another section, and I found a copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, heavily edited, so it'd be like 100 pages long. And the illustration was scary. Ooh. And I said, Mom, what is this? And I don't remember asking for the book. I just remember pointing it out and saying, what on earth is this thing? And then Mom bought me the book. And then I said, what is this thing? Will you read it to me? And Mom started to read me the Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And it grabbed me. And it was fantastic. And when the monster died at the end, I cried. Oh. And so, I mean, I understood the book. And so when I got to kindergarten and we started reading Matt Sat by the Cat, I was horrifically disillusioned because I wanted to read like Mom. And I remember bringing a copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to my teacher, Mrs. Sessions, and saying, I don't want to read about Matt sitting by the cat. I want to read this. And she said, we'll get there. We'll get there, kid. Now go sit down. And so I did. But that was one thing. The other thing I remember a lot of was staring out the window and just being so slow. Worksheets were not my jam. And I ended up with tons of them always coming home with me in the backpack because I didn't finish them at school.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I noticed was that you weren't happy there. And that was a concern to me. And then another thing that I noticed, you struggled with daydreaming or whatever it was you were doing at school, and you'd come home with these packets. And I thought, man, we got all this stuff to do. Is it too much work? I mean, it's kindergarten. It can't be that much work. And I remember you wanted to go play with your friend Kenny. And I said, look, you can't go until you finish these worksheets. And we sat down and you finished the entire day's worksheets within 10 minutes. And that was, over the course of 3 or 4 hours or however long kindergarten was at the time. And I looked at that and I thought, that is interesting. So you can finish a full day's work quota in 10 minutes if you're motivated and you sit down and do it.
The one-on-one instruction helps too
in that 3 hours. So
yeah.
As a parent, those were some of the things that helped me kind of change my mind. That one, this is something that maybe would be a good fit for you and something that I needed to open my mind to rather than just the no way, Jose. And the other thing is that we can do it. I can do this.
Which is so empowering. Yeah. What was that like for you? That transition from, oh my goodness, the only people who do homeschooling are weirdos to, I'm going to try this with my eldest child in first grade. I mean, I want to hear a little bit more about how that transition worked.
Okay. So for me, first I think was just that little seed of an idea that one, you weren't happy and that maybe this would be a better fit for us. And it wouldn't go away. It kept gnawing at me and growing. And then we took a trip to visit my sister who lived in Washington, D.C. We let the teacher know in advance we're going to be gone for a week. Please give us the worksheets so that we can make sure that we keep up with all the requirements and whatnot. And again, we would go spend the day looking at the monuments and doing all of the awesome things and going through the Washington Mall and going through the museums. And then we would spend about 10 to 15 minutes and finish that whole day's worth of work. And it gave me a little bit of confidence that I can do this. I can do this. And then that combination of I think I can and I think I should, because it would be better for you and that you would be happier. And it was still scary because this was long enough ago that it wasn't as common as it is now.
It was not mainstream.
No. And there was the concern of what are the neighbors going to think? And of course, neighbors do think stuff. And it is what it is. So a part of the learning curve is to make sure that we didn't antagonize our wonderful neighbors with a better than, like, I'm doing this because I'm a more dedicated mom or whatever, because that does not make any friends at all. So when people would ask, or someone would say, I could never do that. And I would just say, isn't it wonderful that you don't have to? Isn't it wonderful that we have options, that you can do what matches best for your kids? And then all of a sudden, whatever animosity it just disappeared.
All that defensiveness.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Where it's just, it's okay. And so we bit the bullet and gave it a try and loved it. Loved it. It was so amazing to be able to have my focus be on my kids learning and growing and doing fun things together. As a parent, little kids are frustrating because they're always, you're trying to get stuff done and they're always there keeping you from doing whatever it is you're trying to get done. But when the thing that you're trying to get done is them, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're spending your time working with them and learning with them, and they are the focus of your attention.
Mm-hmm.
It just works. It worked. And I found so much just joy and satisfaction in it. I would go to the homeschool conventions each year, not really because I learned anything there, because, we still kind of did our own thing, but I would just people watch. I looked around to see, okay, there are normal people here who bathe regularly, speak eloquently. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're not just all weirdos.
Right.
And
therefore, my self-image doesn't have to revert to weirdo.
Yes. So it's just, okay.
There are other normal people. I'm a normal people. It's going to be okay.
People, and it's going to be okay. So I did. I would go there each year just to look around and
reaffirm
say,
the normal.
I'm okay. There are other people who look normal, who are doing the same thing, and it's going to be okay.
In terms of state requirements, what all was entailed? I remember that we did end of year assessments, the California
Right.
accomplishment test or something like that, CATs.
Yeah. So that changes from year to year. We live in the state of Utah, and here the rules were that we had to register with the state, that was our intention, and also agree that we would follow the standards. And the tests actually weren't required. The reason that we did them was twofold. One, it was for our assessment to make sure that we were on track.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I kept those in a file folder so that if someone came to me and said, how are your kids doing? I could show those and say, actually, they're on target. They're doing fine. There are homeschool curriculums that you can do under the umbrella of a school system. And when you do it that way, the tests are required, like a K-12, which I did with the younger kids. I don't think you ever did that.
I never did. I did the online high school. They had the electronic high school in Utah, EHS.
Right.
We were trying to get me a transcript for high school so that I could get college admission without the awkwardness of explaining why I hadn't gone to high school.
Right.
And so my entire freshman year, 9th grade, we did online. And that was a transition. It was the first time I had done traditional homework since kindergarten. So that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Taught myself geometry out of the textbook. That was something. Gosh.
That sounds pretty epic. Did I leave you to your own devices to learn geometry?
Well, no, but you helped whenever I asked, but there were just a lot of assignments, and I ended up doing a lot of them on my own.
That's good. That's actually a good thing.
A useful skill, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Again, this was a long time ago, and as we were trying to figure out, okay, how do you go from a homeschool situation to college, which we had always planned on, and we weren't sure what options were available. Eventually, a charter school opened up that was a good match for our needs. And so after your freshman year, then you went to the charter school.
The first year they opened, actually.
And then all the younger siblings went to the charter school, high school. And that gives the transcript, which helps for college admission, and also that socialization, that opportunity to be able to interact with other people, which we all have to do.
We do. You have to learn how to human. That is part of a good education.
Right. And it's good to have some practice.
It's so interesting how that practice, one thing that I find interesting, so at this point, I've graduated from law school. I have 10 years of experience homeschooling with you, which I'm incredibly grateful for because it did not stamp out my love of learning. And I think that is one of the key beauties of homeschool is that it allows for a lot of flexibility, and that flexibility allows for the kind of exploration that I think is particularly healthy in younger children. So that one of our assignments, it took a couple of years to kind of dial in the homeschool curriculum.
Oh, for sure.
As I remember.
Yeah, we tried this, that, and the other.
Once we got to the dialed in version, I think it was a thing of beauty. You would have a list, kind of a grid up on the pantry door, which would have all the assignments that I had to get done that week. And there was no set structure for the days except for family study. And family study was reading some classic that we were reading all together as a family. We'd all sit around as mom read out loud, and it was amazing. I still remember many of those books. There's one of my favorites was Howard Pyle's version of The Adventures of Robin Hood, because the language was just absolutely wonderful. And we would also do a scripture study, typically out of the Bible and Book of Mormon. And that was wonderful. We'd have that kind of hour and a half in the middle of the day. And then the rest of the morning and the rest of the afternoon were for us to work on the assignments that we felt we wanted to work on that day. So it was something like 5 math assignments per week, 1 spelling test, and a certain number of hours of specific study and of independent study of whatever we wanted. And so we had a set of encyclopedias that I just devoured.
Yeah, this is in the olden days before we did everything on Google.
Yes, there was no Wikipedia in those days.
Who'd have thunk?
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was really nice just exploring laterally. I would pick up the encyclopedias and just find out about things that I had never heard about in my life, and it was wonderful. A lot of my interests when I was quite young were animals and spaceships, and so I ended up reading a lot about the Apollo moon program and about squirrels, because for some reason squirrels became an obsession of mine for a couple of months, and because it was homeschool, I could pursue that obsession and just Squirrel. Chase that.
I know.
Chase that
you
interest.
Could chase a squirrel.
Yeah.
One of the things, as you mentioned, as we're trying to dial in how to do it, there is a standard problem with homeschooling that I noticed in other families, and we struggled with it too from time to time. But we got so that we were able to manage this. Is that there's a cycle of just working really, 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 really hard until everybody is burned out, and then you just fall off and nobody really does anything, and then you feel guilty. It's like, oh shoot, we really ought to be doing a lot of stuff, and so we work really, 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 really hard, and it just keeps kind of going in that cycle.
Boom bust.
And so what we found was a balance so that we didn't feel that burnout and the guilt, was having structure or freedom within structure.
Yeah. And that structure for us, after you dialed it in, was the list of assignments that had to be done by the end of the week. So by Friday, you need to get these things done, or else your privileges.
And that was part of the learning curve, is I said, okay, all this needs to be done by Friday. And then you taught me that was not enough structure, because I tried to be open and flexible and just to trust you. And you're just a little kid, and we're all learning how to do this. And so on Monday, you would do nothing.
And on Tuesday, I would do nothing. And on Wednesday, I would think about doing something. And on Thursday, I would do 2 things. And on Friday, I would cry. And do everything.
And well, I don't even know if you got everything done.
I did most of the time.
Because by then there was so much. Because you were a little too young for that much freedom. You didn't understand that there would be consequences. And so by allowing the freedom within a structure, then it became, okay, this is what we have to get done in a week. And this is what you have to get done in a day.
And I think that was just a number.
And it was a number. So I let you, if you wanted to hold off and do all your math on Friday and have that consequence, so be it. But it was enough that we could get through. And that also provided a wonderful way to be able to say, when am I done?
Yes.
Because when you're homeschooling, one of the questions is, are we at school all day long? Or, when can I check that box and just go play and not worry about it anymore? And having that checklist gave us enough structure that we could say, okay, now you're free.
Yeah.
Now you can go and do whatever you want.
That was very liberating. I think it was very interesting, the differences in approach, even among your children. One of the things that is so nice about homeschool is that it's custom. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's completely custom. And you had some unique skills to bring to the table. That background in math education was a godsend. I remember we would all have our turn sitting with Mom most days to do math lessons with Mom, one-on-one, working through the homework. That was awesome. And quite helpful for maintaining on grade level. But my natural inclination is to be something of a procrastinator. Mm-hmm. And when I say something, I mean a black belt level master procrastinator. I'm good at it.
All right.
Years
gotta
of practice.
Be good at stuff.
Oh yeah, I've got a skill. It's useful. And so frequently I would do the easiest work on Monday, the second easiest work on Tuesday, and then I'd end up with the worst stuff on Friday. But Sarah, my younger sister, 2 siblings down, would wake up at the crack of dawn on Monday, do the hardest work first, and be done with literally everything by Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And then she had the rest of the week to, as she put it, la la la, which meant sit in her room listening to audiobooks and making dresses.
I know.
Kind of an amazing thing. It was very interesting just seeing how different all of my siblings have turned out, even having some continuity in the background. We all have the same genes to start with, and all raised in the same home. But gosh, we certainly came with different personalities.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think each one of you are wonderful and amazing. So, as someone who's grown up with this, do you feel like it was beneficial for you? Would you recommend it, or do you wish we'd done something different?
I am very, very grateful for my own sake. It was very helpful for me to have you as a mentor. And it was also very helpful because my personality is not very gregarious, or at least it wasn't when I was quite young. Mm-hmm. I wasn't particularly good at making friends. And I like to think a lot. And so having the home time and the opportunity to study with a little more freedom, a little bit more creativity, was very, very helpful for me. And then as I became a teenager, that was a really good moment to reach out and become integrated into more of a community. I think junior high is famous for being a bit of a snake pit, full of hormones and insecurity.
It's a hard time
Yeah.
growing up, and it's a hard time to be with a bunch of other people who are having a hard time, and you're
at the same
trying
time,
to learn from each
and
other
it's like
when nobody
all
knows
the
what they're doing.
issues
It's a mess.
multiply. But at the age of 15, when I went to high school, that was wonderful. And I fell in with a good group of friends, and they provided a lot of positive peer pressure, and I'm very, very grateful for the mentors that I had there. I think the key thing is that I knew that I was loved, and I knew that my education mattered to you, and that mattered far more than the specific curriculum that we used. I also deeply appreciate that I gained a love of learning from those homeschool years, from listening to you read those books to us, from the discussions that we'd have about them, from having you accessible to ask questions. And one of the things that you did was had us do narrations, where after we read a book or studied a topic, you would have us come and explain it. Tell me about it. Give a verbal explanation. Summarize it. And that's an incredibly useful skill, but it also says, hey, I care about what you're interested in, and I want to hear what's going on. And so it was very good for maintaining a connection and also just feeling listened to, which I don't know how that is for everyone else, but that was how that need was filled for me, and it was very, very helpful, very important. I now have kids, and we have tried a little bit of homeschool up to this point, but this year my oldest two are both going to the local public school. And where we're at right now, I think that's the best fit for them. I don't know that will always be the case. The way I see it and what I've learned from my experience watching you homeschool and experiencing the learning end of that is the level of responsibility and personal involvement that you took in my schooling. And my relationship to our local elementary school is that I use it as a resource. I'm not going to allow them to raise my child for me. I am instead using them as a resource to enhance what we're already doing at home.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that idea of having parents as the responsible person, or how do I put that? The person who is responsible for their education, not that we actually have to do the teaching, but that we have to ensure that that teaching is taking place. And I love the idea of having the school as a resource. Part of the thing that I really appreciate about the homeschool idea is just the freedom that parents have to choose.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, that didn't even exist. That was not an option. And just the idea that if this doesn't work, I, as a parent, have a right to look somewhere else.
Yes.
And to see what is a best fit for my child. And I think it's awesome when you have a great school and you have teachers and that you can use that resource. And
we have one of the best elementary schools in the state, and it's been awesome, particularly since my little girl is gregarious and makes best friends just like that. And for her, at this particular season in her life, I can't imagine anything better than being with a group of like-minded peers and learning how to read in a group and seeing, oh, they're doing it too. That's cool. Because she was quite resistant when I tried to teach her how to read, and did not like the idea of sitting down and having to spell out words. But after only a few weeks of school, she's caught on to the idea and is quite excited about it. And I see her sounding out words all the time. But, as she gets older, I'm nervous about junior high. I feel like junior high is poison pretty much for everybody.
It's a hard time.
I don't think, I'm very sure, let's say that I'm like 85% sure that that's going to be a homeschool phase. I don't know. I'm going to keep watching the school and see if it's good, but the final responsibility is on me and my wife.
Right, and finding out what's the best fit for you and for Adelaide and for Andreas and each one. So.
I guess the key thing is that I'm grateful that you took an interest in my education, and that taking an interest is kind of the key thing. That it was not something that you allowed to just happen. It was something that you were anxiously engaged in and really made efforts. And I mean, you put your money where your mouth was and spent 10 years of your life instructing me one-on-one, and that's amazing.
It was a pleasure. It truly was. I loved it. I loved it. And I think part of the homeschool experience for people who, should I do it or would I be miserable? If you are miserable, then that's not a good fit for you. And if you fight with your kids and you hate each other at the end of the day, that's probably not a good fit for you. But if you can find the joy in it and help build relationships and just enjoy each other, wow, what a wonderful opportunity.
And that might take a few iterations to dial in.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit patient.
It's interesting. I actually met my wife in a homeschool group, which is not typical how you met your spouse story.
No, you were 11.
Socialization, yeah. We got that one dialed in.
Woohoo!
Woo! It was interesting, though, that for the first few weeks that she was homeschooled, it was absolutely miserable for her and my mother-in-law because they were just trying to mimic the exact same curriculum that they were doing at school with the exact same break it down by time thing. And so they were just doing the home version of the exact same thing that was happening at the local school. And that was horrible.
I think that's what a lot of people think homeschool is. It's where you sit down at the table for 7, 8, whatever hours, and you just sit there and work one-on-one. And boy, you can do that, but you won't last very long.
No, that doesn't sound fun. No, just no.
Yeah.
Not as a teacher, not as a student, just no.
Yeah.
But focusing on the goals and focusing on the love of learning and focusing on the specific objectives and saying, okay, how fast can we fill that objective? That's kind of nice when you have the flexibility. Nice.
And speaking of Aubrey, your lovely wife, and her sweet mom, Paulette, we did have a conversation, and she was, explaining that this was a hard thing. And she did not homeschool and did not plan to homeschool. It was a 1-year gift that she gave to her daughter. I will spend 1 year just with you, one-on-one. And it was during the junior high years. And that was her plan. That was her gift. And it was not very enjoyable when they started out. And then we talked, and I asked the question. I said, Paulette, if you're just going to duplicate what they do at school, just send her to school. And she stopped and looked at me, and she thought, there's another way? I said, yeah. You get to choose. And all of a sudden, it became fun, and they did the things that they enjoyed, and they read, and they did field trips, and they just spent time together.
Their projects that Aubrey tells me about were amazing. For PT, they went night skiing often.
And that's pretty cool.
More than a little. And then I don't know exactly what the goals were, but Paulette had Aubrey do the shopping for the home and had to work out the budget and do the price comparisons at the store. And Paulette trusted her enough that she sat at the front of the store and let Aubrey just go forth and do at the tender age of 12. And Aubrey hated it, but she learned some very valuable information through those sorts of experiences.
That is brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, she let her run the whole family budget. You have this much money to work with. You need to provide food for a week. Go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Isn't it awesome that there's more than one way to do things, and that there's more than one approach, and that you can learn things, and just awesome. Do you have some advice for anyone who's considering doing homeschool?
Well, as a student, I can say that it was very, very valuable for me. And that means that it's very valuable for at least some people. I don't know if it works best for everybody always, but I know that it worked very well for me. And right. I'm not a beardy weirdy, and so apparently you can turn out reasonably well and go to law school. So that is a thing.
Awesome. And I absolutely agree. It is not for everyone. And there is no judgment call. It's not somebody is better than or somebody is worse than. What it is an option.
Yeah.
And if it's the right option for your family, then that's great.
It is a way to take more personal responsibility in your education. And it's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. In closing, I would like to share a quote from Sir Winston Churchill. He said, "The price of greatness is responsibility." See you next time on Linda's Corner.